I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. And we do not have a revision to the agenda order. Now, I said our first meeting of the new year, and it is February. So some may say, well, what happened to January? As we know, we had a meeting scheduled in January. However, due to inclement weather and prioritizing safety, we did not meet at that time. So thank you so much for your patience and flexibility. But we are here today. And moving on now to public communications. This is an opportunity where we're able to hear from you, your thoughts, your suggestions, your concerns. We ask for you, please, we do hear all right. I'll explain what that all right is for in just a moment. When you do come to the podium, please do share your name and your town of residence. Each person has 3 minutes to speak, and please be mindful of Charlotte, who will hold up a yellow card when you have 1 minute remaining in your time. And when your time is expired, you will see a red card. We ask for you, please, to take your seat at that time. We very much welcome receiving what is being shared. However, we do ask that it is delivered in a respectful way. And we are attentively listening. However, we do not respond to comments as they are being made. With this being the first meeting of the month, we are receiving comments on both agenda and non-agenda items. We do prioritize first by accept new and revised policies, adoption of the 2024-2025 Board of Education meeting schedule, special education in West Hartford, and financial report period ending December 31st, 2023. So looking at the list that we do have here, we first have Anita.
My name is Anita, and I live in West Hartford. Record keeping is very important, and I noticed that there's a little bit of incompletion on the minutes for the Board Policy Subcommittee meeting held on January 18th. I sent a letter. I never received a response, so I shall read it into the minutes so the record stands. Dear Sir, Madam, it was addressed to the West Hartford Board of Education Policy Subcommittee meeting. I am writing to state that the following important material facts are missing from the minutes. In attendance were not only the policy subcommittee members, but also members of the public. In speaking about student payments in arrears for lunch meal expenses incurred by students, which is to say that there's a balance, Assistant Superintendent Morrow presented PTO funds as a source of funds to cover such arrears. During the meeting, a member of the public attempted to speak by clicking on the hand tab, which is the method used via virtual meeting to be given an opportunity to speak. Lorna Thomas-Farquharson's response was that BOE policy subcommittee meetings do not allow for public comment. And Attorney Ritter stated that since the policy subcommittee meeting is a special meeting, therefore the members in attendance cannot vote to change the agenda items. A reply of receipt to this email is requested. I never received it. Kindly let me know how these salient facts can be incorporated into the minutes to reflect a true understanding and discussion that occurred during the meeting. The importance, there will be a speaker about PTO funds, but what I want to say is if you're passing policy and affects our children, we do have a right to speak. We also have a right to speak in case you're not knowledgeable in certain areas and members of the public are. Therefore, we are now asking that we are allowed to speak at not just here, but at other subcommittee meetings. I do believe that we should also have a finance subcommittee meeting, that if you want to consider yourself, creatures of the state and not creatures of the district, then you need to have your own subcommittee. Other towns have them, finance, curriculum, and policy. And we parents need to speak, and I think there are union members. They might even want to speak about finance as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Addie.
Addie Lorden, West Hartford. On January 18th, 2024, a subcommittee meeting was held on policy in person and remote. The minutes for this meeting are incomplete. policy discussed was 5120, and it deals with meal charging, and there was a discussion of arrears. What is missing from the minutes is the suggestion by Assistant Superintendent Morrow that PTOs could be a possible source of funds to clear meal account arrears. This raises many concerns, as PTO funds are designated for specific items such as field trips and are meant to benefit all students equally. Also, many PTOs are registered charities, such as my daughter's school, Webb Hill. The concern would be if these funds were used for arrears, would it be in violation of IRS rules as to the disbursement of funds correctly by charities? It also raises the concern because at a May 18, 2023 public meeting, Financial Director Elizabeth Hewitt stated in her report that the district receives 10 cents per meal purchased, totaling $85,000. There was no explanation as to where that money ends up, where it's allocated, and nobody questioned it. So my concerns, which the finance examiners have a fiduciary duty to answer for the public, is A, have PTO funds being used to clear arrears, or are they actively being used to clear arrears? If yes, were they allocated by those PTOs and voted by members to use for that purpose? How much was used, and when and where it was used? Also, where did that $85,000 go that was earned on meals purchased in the schools? Where was it allocated? And if it was not used to use those account arrears, where did it go? And you have a responsibility as members of the Board of Education to let the public know where funds go, where they're being used to the benefit of all our students. Stop politicizing the Board of Education and stop weaponizing it against the public. We are your constituents. We want a healthy, thriving school system, and we are willing to help, but we are sick of being shut out.
Thank you. Next, we have Olivia, and pardon, I don't want to mispronounce your last name.
Hello, my name is Olivia Tomashite, and I'm from West Hartford. I hope that you remember me from the last meeting. I'm here again as a homeschooling senior in West Hartford district to speak about AP exams. I'd like to thank Ms. McKernan for helping my brother Philip to find a school that allowed him to register for his AP chemistry exam. We're so happy that worked out, and that Ms. McKernan was willing to help solve that smaller but more urgent problem. Now I'm here to ask Mr. Vicenius and Ms. McKernan to change the local policy permanently so that students like us can be welcomed by their own school for AP exams. And I ask the rest of you to advocate for us to get the resources we need, not from other schools, but from our own public school right here. This problem is not solved yet. Philip is set for this year's exam, yes, but what about the AP courses he might take next year? And the AP courses my other siblings will want to take, and the AP courses other homeschoolers in the area will take. Yes, it's possible to send us all off to different school districts, but is that fair? We moved to West Hartford in the first place, partly because the schools here are amazingly good. They produce students who are well prepared for higher education and complex jobs, and that isn't easy. West Hartford has put a lot of time and money and effort into making our schools this good. You care about students with special needs, and you care about the mental health of students, not just their academics. You have even extended many advantages to students who aren't enrolled in public school. I learned last month from my senator that it is mandatory for public schools to provide transportation not just to their own students, but to private school students from the same district. We're asking for a similar policy on a much smaller scale. Allowing all students from the West Hartford school districts to take AP exams at their local high school would not cost much in resources. It would be a drop in the bucket compared to the $21,000 that are already allocated to every single student in the school system every year. We are contributing to the education of West Hartford students with our tax dollars, unlike people who move to Bloomfield or Rocky Hill as soon as their children have finished school so that they can save on taxes. We have been living here for years despite not being enrolled in public school. We are saving you a lot of money. I think that letting us take AP exams once a year at Hall is a very small ask, given what we are contributing to the community. I know that you care about students in the West Hartford district. That's us. Mr. Vicinus, I read online that your goal while being school superintendent is to lead with vision on a continuous path of improvement. I respect and admire the premise that however wonderful the schools here already are, and we all know they are excellent thanks to all of you, there is always something that you can make even better. It would mean so much to me to know that you would take my voice seriously and that you are willing to act on my request.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry, but your time has expired.
I have one more sentence left. May I finish?
Yes, you may finish your sentence.
I'm asking you, Mr. Vicinus and Ms. McKernan, please change this policy. Show us that you really do care about all the students in our community. Thank you for listening to me and for letting me say that extra sentence. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have Philip.
Hello again. My name is Philip Thomas-Farquharson, and I live in West Hartford. I'm here today to ask you to change your policy of not allowing all students in the district to take AP exams at the West Hartford Public School. When I came here at the last Board of Education meeting to speak on the same issue, I had a pressing need to find a location where I could take the AP Chemistry exam. I would like to thank Ms. McKernan, the Assistant Superintendent of West Hartford Public Schools, for very kindly emailing all the other superintendents in the neighboring districts asking if any of them would be willing to let an external student take the exam. And Rockville High School in Vernon said that they would. So now I can take my AP Chemistry exam in May. But really, this is a very short-term solution. I'm planning on taking many more AP exams in the next few years of my high school education, as are all my siblings. We are asking to be included here at home, where we live and where our family contributes to the community. Many students come here for the great schools and then leave. We are here contributing to the great schools at the same rate as families who have multiple children in the public school system, and we are only asking for something very small. Last month, I went to the Capitol, where Senator Slapp was kind enough to take time to talk to us about matters of education. We talked about how the average expense per student in the district was $21,627 per year. Whoa, I could take a lot of AP exams for that amount. I did a quick back-of-the-napkin calculation to find out what West Hartford is saving on our family. So you figure 21,000 times 4 children is about 86,000, times 12 years of school plus 1 year of kindergarten is over $1 million. $1,124,604 to be precise. That's how much we're saving you. So I appeal to you, would you please be willing to let us take AP exams that we ourselves would be paying a fee for, exams that are a crucial part of our education? To be honest, I feel that we are being excluded very unfairly. Mr. Vicinus and Ms. McKernan, I would be so grateful if you would change your policy and allow all students in the West Hartford district to take AP exams. Members of the Board of Education, I would be so grateful if you would make sure this change is possible so that all West Hartford students have equal access to this educational opportunity. Thank you so much for hearing me out.
Thank you. Next, we have Clara.
My name is Clara, and I live here in West Hartford. I was so touched by the warm welcome that you gave to me and my siblings when we came in December. I am also very glad that my brother Philip has a place to take the AP Chemistry exam. However, I am going into high school this fall, and soon I will be needing to take AP courses and exams as well. I want to ask for more than my siblings. I would like to ask that you do a pilot program allowing me to take a few AP courses at Hall High School without enrolling for the full school day. I am guessing that you will think, oh no, we can't do that. Chaos will ensue. How will we know who is coming and going? What if everyone starts wanting to do that? Let me reassure you, we are an unusual family. I don't think you'll have tons of people wanting to do that. And in any case, if you just do a small pilot program, you can always discontinue it if you don't like it. I don't think it will be as messy as you might fear. The principal at Hall High School, Mr. Daniel Zatoun, told us that it would be way too complicated and consume a lot of resources, as well as be a liability, if we were to take AP exams there. So I was really shocked when the assistant principal at Rockville High told my brother that all he had to do was select Rockville as his AP location choice online and send them a check for $98. I was sort of surprised after what Mr. Zatoun had said, that it didn't involve more than that. Hey, they didn't even do a background check. I know everything is more complicated than it looks, but after Rockville High made it that easy, I found it hard to believe Mr. Zatoun that it would be so impossibly difficult and expensive and dangerous to let me take AP exams at Hull High School. Given how much it would mean to us and how important it is for our education, I hope you would be willing, after all, to consider taking on whatever hassle it may indeed involve. I don't think it would be nearly as complicated as lots of other accommodations for students in the district that are considered routine and obligatory. And truly, I would be surprised if more than a handful of students in West Hartford want to take AP exams at Hull anyway, because students who are striving to succeed are probably living here in order to be at the great public schools. Students who are high achievers and are homeschooling are likely to be living in cheaper places since they don't need the schools here. May I appeal to you, Mr. Vicenius, in any case, to change the policy so that I could at least participate in taking AP exams at Hull High School? Members of the Board of Education, could you support me in this? It would mean so much to me personally to know that I am included in my home community, that you are proud of me and support me, too. I have heard that the public transportation for Connecticut schools includes all children in all schools, and that buses take them to their schools whether they are at public school or not. So I know that it is possible for you to think about this important issue that concerns us all in a similar way. Taking the AP exams is even more important for my future than it might be for school children, since those who are educated outside schools often face suspicion about their qualifications. I am ready to prove my qualifications with outside markers, and the AP exams are an excellent way for me to do that. I would be so happy if you would be willing to help change the policy about AP courses and exams, or at least just the exams, by the time that I am in my second year of high school. This is really important to me.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, your time has expired.
May I say just one more sentence
Yes,
also?
you may, yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to my concern. I am very grateful to you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jacob.
Hello, my name is Jacob Thomas-Farquharson, and as you have probably guessed, I am a resident of West Hartford. I'm here tonight to petition you, members of the Board of Education, as well as Mr. Vicenius.
Have a frog in your throat? Okay. I'll just take it with you. You're fine.
As well as Mr. Vicenius and Miss McKernan, to change your policy to include me as what I am, a West Hartford student. I want to be able to take AP exams here like every other student. I need to take those exams as much as...
That's good. Just read this again. Are you done? Okay. Do you want me to read it for you? No? Okay, you can be done.
Thank you. We heard your message. Thank you. Is there anyone, that is all who we had signed up on the list here. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on an agenda or non-agenda item? Okay, we'll pause public communications at this time. Now moving on to non-staff communications and reports. This is where we're able to hear from our student representatives sharing on their respective schools. And so if we first may begin with Chris sharing about Conard.
Hi, everyone. So, yeah, there's a lot of news since we haven't had a meeting in a while. So, first of all, the Conard Chinese department will be having a dragon dance parade tomorrow during second period, where they'll be having a dragon and traditional music playing throughout the hallways, as well as Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year cards, I believe. Further on, in terms of Connor drama, they'll be having the production of Les Miserables has started selling tickets to the public on the website connordrama.ludus.com. The show will have shows throughout the month of March. So the underclassmen classes have started course selection, which different teachers have been going to classes to present about their courses so the underclassmen classes can take those classes in the upcoming year. And then lastly, last Tuesday, Senator Blumenthal visited Connor to discuss with students about the importance of internet safety. I was grateful to be one of those students, and it was very interesting hearing the senator's perspective on the stuff and sharing our own perspective, which he used later in the judiciary hearing that he had. Yeah.
And you represented quite well, Chris, at that time. Thank you so much for sharing. Liam, sharing regarding Hall.
Yes, like Chris, there is a lot of updates. To begin with winter sports, championship season is in full swing. Recently, I believe it was a week from Saturday, the boys indoor track team won the CCC championship, which I'm a member of, so definitely a plug. Also, this week it is Spirit Week at Hall. So again, students are dressing up. I believe today was like Dynamic Duo Day, so just sort of fun things to get us into spirit for our pep rally, which will be held on Friday. Also, in terms of Hall Theater, there will be 10-minute plays that will be occurring in the hallways on Thursday and Friday, which are a great chance for our theater students to show what they've been doing in classes. Since it is Black History Month, the morning announcers have been playing many different types of music from various Black artists throughout the mornings. Let's see. Oh, there's also the FAFSA challenge, which is occurring at Hall, which basically is for seniors who have submitted their financial aid for FAFSA, and you are entered into a raffle where you can earn prizes such as AirPods, yearbooks, prom tickets, etc. And then finally, we had class meetings last week where Mrs. Doon presented to each of the classes individually, just as a reminder of norms and expectations for the rest of the school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. And before we move on, just want to say how proud we are of the both of you. We know that your responsibilities, first and foremost, are as students. So if you at any point in time have to depart early, please feel free to do so. Now moving on to unfinished business, which we do not have any of. Now to new business, where we will receive a presentation of the capital improvement plan for 2024-2025. And we will entertain a recommendation that the Board of Education receive the capital improvement plan for 2024-2025 and begin the process of reviewing for final approval and adoption at the February 21st, 2024 Board of Education meeting. And so we're so thankful to have our wonderful teammates here to share with us about the CIP. And passing the baton.
Sure. I'll just make quick introductions to our board members. For anyone who doesn't know, obviously everyone knows Liz Hewitt, our Director of Finance, and very pleased to welcome to the board table Mr. Bob Palmer, who I believe was, did you come up and present in October at the beginning of the year with Andy, or was that just Andy? But Bob is, that was just Andy, Director of our Plant and Facilities, and just an amazing asset. Bob works both on the education side and also on the town side, and he and Liz will present our capital improvement budget.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to present the capital improvement plan for 24-25. Bob will go through and discuss the details of our capital plan, but before he does so, I just wanted to talk briefly, kind of an overview of the process for those who might not be familiar with it. So the book that you've received outlines all of the superintendent's recommendations for ongoing maintenance, new construction, furniture, equipment, and computer infrastructure for all of the district schools. We'll review that proposal tonight. We'll answer any questions that you may have, and then we are scheduled to adopt the plan with any modifications that you make at your next board meeting. Once the CIP is adopted, it will be forwarded to the town council, or I'm sorry, to the town manager for inclusion in the town's capital improvement plan. He will be presenting that to the town council on March 12th. The town council will then review the proposal, amend it, and do their adoption on April 23rd. So as many of you know, the town is actually the owner of all of our school buildings and physical assets. And for that reason, they are the ones who handle all financial activity related to capital improvement. So the town issues debts, applies for grants, receives all monies, makes all expenditures, and takes care of all of the financial accounting for capital projects. And as the operator of the buildings, what we're really doing is providing our recommendation as to capital improvements that are needed for safety reasons or in order to effectively deliver educational services. So I just wanted you to kind of have that lens as we go through it. You'll see in the book that we provide detail for the first 3 years of the 12-year plan because those projects are more known to us. And then we kind of look at things on an overall category level for later years. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on the actual process, or if there are none, I will hand it over to Bob to walk through the details. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
So I see that there's like a uptick in the 4th year of the plan. Is that purely due to inflation, or is there just higher amounts of like change happening in the 4th year? Throughout, I don't know if I have like a different one than you guys, but it's labeled Table 3, 12-year capital improvement plan. So is that purely due to inflationary reasons that there's higher values on the 27-28 year?
It is. So
Okay.
we have a built-in inflation index of approximately 3% on the overall plan. Is that still what you're using, Doug?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. And so you'll see that every year, the ongoing projects increase in value in order to keep up with inflation and still be able to perform and complete projects.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Gayle and then Ethan, or Ethan and then Gayle.
Oh, you can go first. Okay.
So I had a question, Liz, based on what you just said. If the town owns all of the properties and the town basically, essentially is funding all this, why are we even voting on this? Like, why does this come to us and not go to the town council?
So it eventually goes to the town council, but what the council is looking for as the experts in education and delivery of services are your recommendations as to what the school buildings need in order to be effective. Similar to how the Department of Community Development makes recommendations as to what roads need to be repaired, what type of work needs to be done, et cetera. They look at us as the expert in the buildings because we operate them and are in them every day.
Okay, and then there's, I think this also, there's this line in here about the town council was going to reinstate funding on January 23rd. Did
Yes.
that actually happen?
That did happen, and those funds have been appropriated to our projects.
Okay, thank you.
So, excuse me. So, I'm doing this from memory, but I believe at the end of, or at the beginning of the school year, you presented last year's budget, and there were a number of projects that didn't get completed.
Correct.
That's not listed here, though, is it?
So I think that the projects that you're referring to, as Bob goes through and says what we are planning to actually do, you'll see the timing of those. So the funding is still there for them, but they have not occurred yet due to either delays or timing, and I think when Bob walks through all of them,
No,
you'll
I've
see
seen
that.
But for future, would it be easy to add, or not easy is the wrong word, would it be possible to add another column in there just to show what's outstanding and needs to be completed? Just to put things in context? Yeah, but it doesn't show what's not completed.
Yeah, I do mention in Table 2 the projects that were completed and the ones that were postponed.
Yeah, but there were no, I was looking for dollars, too.
So, no, I don't have the dollars or the numbers associated with that.
Yeah, I was just thinking for presentation for future years. To me, it would be helpful. Just more context, not that I'm going to do with it.
Okay. A lot of times we don't know the pricing either until it's bid. So, I mean, we budget, obviously, to come up with some general numbers, but we don't have the specific numbers until we're bidding the project and executing the project.
No, yeah,
So,
I'm talking about last year's one.
oh, what
You had a
what the
projection,
final
and I
prices are,
understand
yeah.
the number could change,
So-
between the year to year, but it was just a suggestion that
Okay.
would be helpful.
We'll take it under
occurred to me last
consideration.
year, it occurs to me this year.
Sure.
Thank you.
Just ask one other question, sort of tagging on to what Ethan said. If the projects aren't completed, like last year, we didn't complete all the projects, where does that money go? Does that just sit in the general fund, or does that go back somewhere?
So the appropriation sits in the capital projects fund, not in the general fund. So the town has a separate fund, the capital projects fund, where these appropriations sit. Most of our projects are funded via general obligation bonds, and those bonds are not actually issued until a project has either been started or completed. So we bond in arrears. So we don't already have the actual cash for those projects sitting someplace. The appropriation is sitting there because we know we will be doing the project, and then the town looks at cash flow, their needs, and they issue debt once per year to fund those projects.
Claire.
Since our responsibility is safety and delivery of educational services, and the buildings are owned by the town, if there is a static or maintenance issue with a building that doesn't have to do with safety or delivery of service, would that then be proposed to the town council and not be proposed at this meeting?
I think any project that has to do with a school building would come before you so that you could weigh in on it.
Okay, and then in looking, this goes out to 2027. So if it's not listed in this plan, anything proposed wouldn't be able to be started to 2027?
No, it's more fluid than that. So we constantly are looking at the groups of projects that we intend to do, but things change. So perhaps, you'll see some reprioritization of projects. So, the roof, like in this year's plan, the roof order has changed just because at Hall, the roof is leaking more than the other two buildings that I want to do. So we reshuffle the list a little bit and look at the priorities and move things around a little bit. So we have flexibility in the plan. But we try to identify the projects because it takes a long time to plan the projects, get them designed, get them out to bid, and if there's state funding involved, then we have to go through that process as well. So it's a multi-year process to get these projects a lot of these projects off the ground. So, and again, if priorities in the district change or conditions in the buildings change, then we have to react to that and we can reshuffle the list. We do have flexibility in that. So.
But I guess I'm wondering, is it appropriate for a Board of Ed member who's had residents come to them about something about a building to propose that into this, or is that?
You certainly can bring that to our attention.
Okay.
If there's concerns that you're hearing from residents.
Okay.
So, yes.
Thanks.
Chris.
So these funds that are allocated within the 12-year capital plan, are they allocated by per school on like an equal basis, or is there it's just as need be basis?
No, it's a district-wide plan. So obviously, some of our buildings are much older than some of our buildings are fairly new. More funds typically go to the older buildings and the larger buildings. So it's not allocated on an equal basis. So it's based on conditions for the most part. So. That we do treat each high school equally. So.
Any other questions at this time? Please continue.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll begin by talking about Table 1, which is the capital improvement program, which was the board adopted budget last year for fiscal year 23 and 24. We had reference to the fact before that the computer infrastructure account and the furniture and equipment replacement accounts were both were reduced by the town council in their budget, but those were recently in January reinstated, and we do have the funds for those. So at this point, we are fully, we did receive all the capital improvement program funding that the board had adopted last year. So what we'd like to do now is just talk about the projects that were planned and the projects that we completed and what happened during the fiscal year 23-24. So as I talk about, sometimes we run into problems with projects in design and bidding, execution, conflicts with building use, all kinds of reasons that projects get delayed or postponed. So again, we reshuffle the deck, and sometimes we get the opportunity to actually reach ahead on a project and do one, which we did this past year, which is, you know, it happens. So those are good things. So we try to be flexible and to do as much work as we can, especially during the summer months. So asbestos removal. So asbestos is in most of our buildings, except for the brand new Charter Oak. Every other building in the district has some type of level of asbestos in it. So we often find asbestos in different types of projects, flooring projects, associated with plumbing fixtures, piping installation, those type of things. So it's a known issue. So we have an account that handles that. So if we run into asbestos on a project, such as flooring, we use this asbestos account to support that removal of the environmental issues in association with other projects. So that's how we utilize that. We did flooring last summer, so there was use of the asbestos removal funds. Computer infrastructure. Again, we weren't fully funded for the beginning of the fiscal year, but we are now, so that will continue to happen, replacement. Same thing with furniture and equipment replacement. We'll be executing those purchases before the end of the fiscal year. For heating and ventilation systems, we had scheduled to replace an air handler at Sedgwick Middle School for the music area, and that has been completed. For exterior school buildings, we had planned on doing a roof replacement at Brayburn. That, however, was postponed due to design things, and then also the reprioritization of the list. The hall roof really had developed quite a few more leaks and deteriorated quite a bit. So we wanted to push that ahead. So we focused on getting that designed, and that's going out to bid shortly this year. We'll be back to Brayburn in the next few years. But the Brayburn roof does need to be replaced, but it's not actively leaking at this point, so that was why we did that. We also had scheduled masonry repairs at Hall and Sedgwick, and we were able to complete those. For interior school building improvements, we had flooring replacement and painting at King Philip, which we did complete. The Northfield Gym reflooring we did, that was also completed. Whiting Lane was scheduled to be done, because we have summer school there and we weren't able to relocate that program, we postponed that flooring replacement to this summer. So that program this summer will be at Aiken, and then we'll be able to do that project this summer at Whiting Lane along with some other stuff there too. So we had restroom renovations scheduled at Sedgwick. That was phase 2 of a 2-year project that was completed as well. We had exterior door replacements at Hall. The doors were bid. They've been awarded. They are a very long lead time. They'll be done this summer. Okay, we're still seeing supply chain and just long lead times on certain types of items in the world of construction. So those will be done this summer. So, site and athletic improvements, visitor bleacher replacement at Conard. We didn't get to it during the summer, but it has been awarded. We anticipate starting that project this spring and summer, the removal of those bleachers and replacement of those. We also were scheduled to do paving at the rear lot of King Philip, which we did complete. And we had the opportunity to, because we had some availability at Brayburn because we weren't doing the roof, and we had a contractor available. So we reached ahead in the next year and grabbed the Brayburn parking lot, which had been designed already, and we were able to execute that project and get that done before school started in the fall. So Wolcott seating replacement, that was postponed till next summer. We're just running a little bit behind on seating replacements. Right now we're at King Philip, and we do it in small sections, so we don't impact the school operation completely. They don't lose the use of the auditorium, so it is going a little bit slower than we wanted it to, so that's why that was postponed. School security, we made improvements to the main entrance at Duffy. That's substantially complete. Again, we have some long lead time items that we're still waiting for, but the majority of that work was completed. Wolcott security and office. So last year was the first year of a 2 years of funding. The first year was for design. That design has been taking place in meetings with the school. We're proceeding to complete the design this spring and proceed to bidding for the spring of 24 in the spring. So as Liz talked about, we do adopt a 12-year CIP plan, but we look at funding for those 12 years, and we do have the inflation escalator on there to help us keep pace with inflation. But we do a very detailed 3-year plan of what we think is going to happen in the next 3 years. Allows us to do the planning, engage architects, get things evaluated, make plans, and execute these projects. So I'm going to go school by school. There is a new category that we did add to the list of projects this year. We added a line item for school building HVAC studies. This is a new state mandate that came down last year legislatively. It was proposed 2 years ago, and it was revised this current year with more clarification. What it's going to do is require us to hire an engineer and conduct a HVAC study of all our buildings. So it's a big undertaking. The state has mandated that we finish this report by January 1st of 2025. I don't think that's going to be feasible, but we will have a firm engaged this summer to begin that process, and there is a provision in the legislation that allows us to ask for an extension as long as we've begun the process. You also have to remember that there are another 160-something districts that are going to be doing the same exact work. So there's really only 6 firms in the state, I think, that are capable of completing it, and there's 1,300 schools. So it's a very big undertaking, and so there's going to be a lot of competition for those engineers and to get that done. And it's expensive, so we're asking for $800,000, and that's a capital non-reoccurring expense that we're including that in. And it has to be done every 5 years. So besides that project, there's the other projects that we're planning on doing over the next 3 years. And I'm going by building, no particular by alphabetical. There's no priority here. So at Aiken, we're planning on restroom renovations in year 2, which will be the summer of 25 and 26. The Brayburn roof will be scheduled in year 2 as well for construction. Bugby will do restroom renovations in year 3, roof replacement in year 3. We'll also begin the fresh air and windows project in years 2 and 3 at Bugby. So that's the 15-year or so program where we're replacing windows and installing fresh air at our elementary schools. For Conard, we'll do exterior door replacements in year 3, also some air handler replacements in year 3. Duffy, we have quite a bit planned in year 3 as we're beginning the fresh air project there this summer, and that'll take 2 summers. So really, we can't do anything else while that project's going on. So in year 3, we'll come back and do flooring and painting. We'll also do some paving on the north parking lot at Duffy. Hall restroom renovations will be this summer, and that'll be in the B section if you're familiar with the building, on the 2nd and 3rd floors. We'll do roof replacement this upcoming summer as well. The health suite, we're going to renovate that space, make it a little bit more efficient for the nursing staff there as the school. We have air handler replacements in year 2. Also in year 2, we'll be doing replacing the athletic field irrigation system. At this point, it is at the end of its life. It has lots of leaks. We chase leaks all the time, and really the payback on that project of fixing that project and getting it to work correctly will the payback will be 5 or 6 years on that, in the amount of water that we do save. It's an interesting project because we're probably going to look at drilling some wells there instead of being on the MDC public water supply. That way, the price of doing that and pumping our own water is actually much cheaper than buying water from the MDC for the irrigation there. So it'll be an interesting project. King Philip, we're going to replace the gym floor in the 7th, 8th grade gym. We have main entrance security improvements that are going to happen there this summer. In years 2 and 3, we'll do flooring and painting, and we'll also, in year 2, do health suite improvements there as well. Sedgwick, we have exterior doors scheduled for year 2. In year 3, the electrical switchgear for Sedgwick is proposed to be replaced. It's pretty old, and it's a safety concern, so we want to get that replaced. Webster Hill, fresh air and windows. So that's a 2-year project that will be starting. We're going to go out to bid this spring with it. We probably won't do any construction this year. Obviously, we won't do any construction this year, but we'll be ready to go next year and begin that process. Again, it'll probably take 2 summers. In conjunction with that project, we'll be able to remove the boiler. It's an old steam system boiler, and then we're going to use heat pumps to heat and cool that building. So it'll be what we call an all-electric building. Wedding Lane, we're going to be doing flooring. As I said, we moved the program out of there for the summer, so we'll be doing some flooring and painting. We're also going to be doing some paving of one of the parking lots and doing a lot of sidewalk replacements while we have nobody at the site. Wolcott Auditorium seating will be this summer. That was postponed from last year. We'll also do some auditorium lighting and sound improvements. In year 2, we'll look at cafeteria flooring replacement and painting, and beginning this summer, late fall, and in through next summer, we'll be doing the Wolcott office improvements. So we'll be building bringing the office from the interior of the building to the exterior of the building and creating a safer entry system for that. So that's really our program that we have planned. I'm certainly happy to take any questions and answer those for you.
Thank you. What I would like to do before we continue with questions is to formally have this presented with a motion and it's seconded, and then we'll go into discussion, which has already happened.
Okay.
And so with that, seeking a motion that the Board of Education receive the capital improvement plan for 2024-2025 and begin the process of reviewing for final approval and adoption at the February 21st, 2024 Board of Education meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Jason. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Shannon. Discussion. Questions, teammates, from what's been shared? Yes, Ethan.
Question, just to clarify. The Wolcott, you have cafeteria planning and cafeteria flooring. That isn't under the nutrition?
It is
because it's leasehold improvement type thing?
No.
Okay.
No, so they use the cafeteria for general education purposes, and we're only able to use cafeteria funds for the actual kitchen, serving lines, areas that are only used for meal service.
Okay. Just wondering.
Yes.
Gayle, you didn't say anything, but your eyes were communicating. Yes, please.
So I'm looking at this, obviously last year I couldn't believe that we were spending $1.5 million to repave tennis courts. So I guess I shouldn't be surprised that we're spending $800,000 for an HVAC study, which sounds like just beyond belief to me. But it does say here that this is a CNRE fund. Is that meaning that we're not actually paying it and we have a fund that pays it, or is that the town is actually paying for that?
So the town is paying for that. So CNRE refers to the Capital Non-Recurring Expenditure Fund, and so the town uses those funds for projects that are either less than $100,000 or that do not have a useful life of more than 10 years, I think is the cutoff. So if you're, paving a road or doing something like that, they will issue bonds for that, but we don't want to issue bonds for a study. So instead, we use funds that are in this Capital Non-Recurring Expenditure Fund.
So it's town funds?
Town funds.
Okay.
And if I may, Gayle, the notion that the state is requiring, not just West Hartford Public Schools, but as Bob mentioned, all school districts to conduct this study, not just this year, but every 5 years as, I understand the intention of that, but it is the definition of an unfunded mandate, and it is a significant expense. It is something that is being talked about across the state relative to the costs that are thereby incurred by districts in order to do that.
Claire and then Shannon.
So I was going to ask, is it an unfunded mandate, and are there grants or anything available? So every district must spend this amount of money on a study every 5 years?
Yeah,
Not to
depends on the
mention
size of your,
implementing.
it depends on the size of your district. So,
Okay.
with 16 schools, that's what we think it's going to cost.
Yeah.
So.
So first, this is amazing for 16 schools and all that you're juggling and all these numbers. I can't imagine the complexity of all this. So thank you for the report and all the detail. Cogswell Building wasn't included in any of this for the Stride and post-secondary. Is that a leased building? And where does that show on the Board of Ed budget? What is that under?
So the lease cost shows in our operating budget in the general fund.
Okay. And so we don't do any kind of repair work, we just rent the building?
Correct.
Okay. And then the issue that was brought to my attention, it has nothing to do with safety or education, but the tower on Sedgwick Middle School, the paint is peeling. It was redone about, I don't know how many years ago, but is there a mechanical function of that tower? And is there any way to look at how we could get that painted? It is a...
I'll take a look into how getting it painted. There is, I'm trying to think if there's any mechanical equipment in that tower. So I don't,
What is it?
I don't believe it is. So I'm trying to remember. So I don't think I've actually ever been in it.
Yeah, so there, many
So-
people have said to me, why don't you guys paint that? I'm
Yeah.
just wondering.
Okay, it's an aesthetics thing, right?
Yeah, so it has no function, but proud of the schools, and that looks really silly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just related to the study, if it's every 5 years, I don't see it projected out in the future.
Yeah, I did
years.
notice that too. Thank you.
Okay.
So
Would you expect it to be the same amount approximately?
I think we'll live and learn.
Okay.
Right.
Other questions, comments? Gayle?
Is it possible, like on these sheets where you give us, each project separately, is there a way to know how many people bid on each project? Or how many bids you got on a project?
Well, these are all future projects. So any project that gets bid is on the town's website, and you can go and look, and all the bid results are there.
So everybody who bid on
Yep,
it?
they do a bid compilation. So everybody who bids on a project is listed there in their pricing. So, yep.
Oh, okay. And that would include these projects
Yep, all these
as well?
projects, right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, recognizing the motion on the floor, all of those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Now moving on to, still under new business, letter B, a motion by Lorna Thomas-Farquharson, Jason Gagnon, and Gayle Harris to accept new and revised policies as a first reading. Seeking a motion that the Board of Education accept as a first reading the following new and revised policies, which were revised by the Board Policy Subcommittee. They include Student Series 5000, such as 5120, meal charging, 5505, policy to improve completion rates of the free application for federal student aid, 5320, student discipline, suspension and expulsion, 5630, health assessments and screening, and 5750, student privacy. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Jason. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Gayle. Discussion. So, teammates, policy subcommittee and board as a whole, as has been stated, these are policies that we bring before you as a first reading. Some have been noted as new policies, some have been noted as revisions, but nonetheless, the content has been provided to you beforehand, and seeking your input. We'll state that many, if not all of these, are policies, as we know, are ones that essentially will help us to remain to be in compliant with state statutes. In essence, these are ones that are being presented and told to us to be in compliance with state and federal statutes. However, nonetheless, your voice is important, and we certainly do need to vote on them, but just wanted to present those parameters before us. Any questions? And our teammate, Dr. Morrow, is not here, and so hopefully we're representing well Policy Subcommittee in his absence. Any questions you may have? And policy teammates, anything you would like to share as well? Yeah, Ethan.
I have two questions. The first one is there a way to say, like on these policies, where it's just verbiage and where there's actual, because I'm reading through trying to figure out what changed or what didn't change. And I'm assuming it wasn't anything changing, but
Sure. So I know there's an effort to undertake that on, what's redlined and what's blue. And I know that for one of the policies you're looking at, like for instance, under student discipline, the entire policy was essentially kind of redlined out, and the new policy specific to student discipline, much longer, much more comprehensive, complete with definitions. A whole section on definitions, on a variety of things, and all of those definitions are really intended to kind of give clarity around, I would expect, discipline policies that might require a mandatory suspension or a mandatory expulsion based on, if you look at some of the definition headings. When you look at the meal charging policy, the reason, if you're reading that and wondering, hey, what changed? That policy is new in its entirety. It does stem from a fairly recent state law. I was actually, on this topic, I happened to pull a recent memo from the State Department of Education that goes back to June of 2022, so essentially call it the beginning of last school year or the end of the previous year. And in looking at what this memo from the State Department of Education says and the language that's included within it, and then looking at the model policy that is up for your consideration for adoption from Shipman and Goodwin, there's a bulk of the language that's just direct from the state guidance in terms of what's required, what's prohibited on the part of the district, which is all in keeping with what our practice has always been. I think it was several years ago, maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago, where it was uncovered that there were some practices where students perhaps were delinquent in their funds, and there were some issues, some friction points at a school. And I remember it was the Superintendent Tom Moore at the time that made very public comments. There will be no instance where a child is denied the ability to have a meal just because they're $10 in arrears or whatever it is. And it is good to see that same conversation occurred at the state level, made its way into a mandate for all school districts. And really what we're doing with that particular policy is really just updating our written policy to match what has been a practice, at least certainly in earnest over the last 8 or 9 years. And I think probably what was always intended, but absent having it written down, what the expectation is, every once in a while, mistakes might be made. So I'm glad to see, I'm certainly glad to see this policy here. With regard to the mandatory FAFSA policy, that's another state mandate that's very recent that indicates that essentially it's an expectation that every student will complete a FAFSA, and school districts are to propose a policy that mandates that as a graduation requirement. That said, the state's very keen to recognize there may be a family who simply says, college is not something that we're interested in, and I'm not making my child complete this, or we're not completing this. And there's a provision within the policy as recommended by the state that says schools are not going to hold anyone from graduating as long as we can verify that we've had the conversation with the family. Then we can easily just waive that requirement on our own as part of our practice. So that's essentially, I believe, what that policy entails. That again, that's a brand new policy. But the other policy, to your point, Ethan, I think it's not until you get to one of the later policies in the book where you can kind of see the red and the blue together on a singular page, so you can really appreciate what changed. But when you're looking at policy 5505, policy 5320 on student discipline and expulsion, which goes on for several pages because it's an extremely comprehensive policy based on the requirements that are coming down from the State Department of Education and the state legislature to just be very transparent about all of these things that impact students' abilities to have routine access to their education relative to student discipline, the protections from expulsion. When there's a stipulated, students always have access because even when a student's expelled, we have a requirement to provide them with their educational services, which we do. But this kind of allows for a place that any parent can go and see if they're in the unfortunate position of having to be part of an expulsion hearing, to understand what does it mean to be a stipulated agreement. What are my rights, my protections? What does it mean if a student is age 18 or 16, and so on and so forth? What does it mean if I choose to leave the district? Does this discipline follow me or not follow me? And is that the school doing that to me, or is that part of state law? So this policy is extremely comprehensive in terms of spelling it all out, which is why at the end of the day, I would tell you that a dramatic amount of it changed in terms of writing, but the majority of it is the same in terms of practice. It's really just putting it all down onto paper.
All right, thank you. It's helpful just because to put the context. Then I have one last question, and I apologize for asking it, but I'm confused. There was mention made about PTO funds. I couldn't find that in any of the policies, so I assume that's not in there.
No, that's not in the policy at all.
That's all I need to know. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions with the policies on the floor? Again, this is the first reading, so we do not vote today. Yes, Claire.
So the policy to improve completion rate of free application for federal student aid, 5505, is this wording from the state?
Yeah, it's the shipment policy, which was written based on language from the State Department of Education.
So number 3, it says graduation requirement. Number 3 said completed waiver of completion signed by parent. But then the next paragraph says after 15th of the school year, if there was a good faith effort. So it's kind of, one says you have to have a signed thing and it's your graduation completion, but then you follow by saying you could have a conversation instead.
Yeah, what the state is attempting to do is put the onus onto the school districts, number one, to ensure that they're providing information about the FAFSA to all families, and overcoming any and all obstacles that they might exist. Making sure that schools aren't making assumptions about the potential for college attendance. So that's kind of the front end of that, where you see that, and that language does in fact kind of come from the state.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, there is a reality check that's put into that, and an understanding that some families may simply say to us, hey, I'm not willing to sign something, and I'm not willing to fill out the FAFSA, and we're not trying to, and nor is the state really trying to intrude on their parental rights to make those decisions. So there is leeway that's then given that says, okay, school district, as long as you're willing to kind of bless off that you have made the good faith effort, I believe that's some of the language, to communicate that with families, the student may still graduate, which is certainly what we would want.
To say a requirement. The other thing is, I can't imagine being assisted in a financial aid application. Wouldn't you, to be assisted by a school, wouldn't you have to give your family's financial private information? You wouldn't do that in a school setting.
There's all kinds of assistance. We actually will, some of the assistance that's provided, not necessarily in sharing of the financial information, but walking through the forms, finding ways. The FAFSA is a very, I'm seeing a lot of heads. It's a very complicated form to fill out, and we host, as a routine, we host services typically through our school counseling department, but we've had presenters that have come in that will provide kind of workshops for families, and they'll walk through. We may be there may be families who reach out to us and would request some language assistance. I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure the FAFSA must be translatable in certain languages, but that doesn't necessarily negate the need for potentially some question and answer as you're going through it. And so these are more likely some types of the forms of assistance that we would be able to provide, and certainly not seeking to to have to look at financials for families and things of this nature, just some of the help with the navigation and the explanation on some of the terms.
Well, and I think it's very important. I was a student who filled it out alone. I had a parent who had no idea, and so I did it myself. But that was a while ago, and it is complicated. The one question I have is I feel like kids that don't fill that out, or families that don't see college as something in their future, and don't understand what's involved. But yet we have a very high rate of kids going on to some kind of training, technical college, vocational college, after. So has this been a problem in West Hartford of a lack of people filling this out?
I would not call it a problem in West Hartford at all. I would never claim that we're perfect, and I applaud. This is one of those pieces of legislation. I certainly do applaud the state in terms of what I think the intent of the legislation is. But there have been efforts afoot among the state, to create visibility in and around FAFSA completion. So I know that when we do our state reports on whether it's our achievement results or whether it's our performance and profile report, we reference EdSite. EdSite is the public website that really lists a lot of the educational accountability measures. And the state started publicizing FAFSA completion rates for schools, just to make that transparent. We're involved. I believe I heard one of the students, I think Liam, talk about an effort underfoot at Hall related to FAFSA completion rates, because that was an area where we saw that there was one subset of our population that could improve in completion rates, and we applied for, or I believe that we were eligible for a grant for funding, and so they have special effort that's ongoing to be able to make that. Basically be able to make that target and ensure that we have high rates among all of our students. And we share that information. Our school counseling department does an excellent job to talk about it, because in addition, as you say, in addition to FAFSA, there are other recent changes. There's the automatic enrollment into our community college program, our state college program, that was new last year, that we sent. I believe we just sent letters home, or we'll be sending letters home very soon. This is the time frame when those go out, just based on your GPA. You can qualify for automatic enrollment into the community college program. So there's a big effort underfoot to provide as much transparency as possible to this across the state, and it's to be applauded, and at the same time, without intruding on a parent's right to decide what they want to do, or a child's right at age 18 to decide what they want to do.
Excuse me, any other questions or comments? All right, well, thank you all so much. We'll revisit these the next time to vote on them. Thank you again, and thank you for your input, Mr. Paul. Now moving on to C, adoption of the annual board meeting schedule for 2024-2025. Seeking a motion that the Board of Education review and revise as appropriate the proposed annual board meeting schedule and adopt a final meeting calendar for the 2024-2025 school year. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Jason. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Shannon. Discussion and passing the baton.
Yeah, if I may, I'll just highlight a couple of things. So in front of you, the board dates pretty much following the same pattern that we follow each year, taking advantage of the first and third Tuesdays as they exist throughout the year. You'll note in red ink anything that falls kind of on a different day. So just a couple things I want to point out just for clarity. Certainly in November, as has been our tradition, we would meet on a Wednesday, November the 6th, and that's just in recognition of Election Day. The February meeting on February the 19th, that just follows from the President's Day weekend, so no school on that Tuesday. Then in March, those Wednesdays are just our budget hearings, which typically fall on different days. The one thing I want to point out that's kind of not in red is in April, there really is only one meeting scheduled. The third Tuesday of the month in April coincides with our spring break, so there's no school. Typically, we try to go after then the fourth Tuesday, and the boardroom's not available because the town council has chambers. And if we pushed it out any later, then it's really kind of just landing on top of the May 6th meeting. So kind of looking at the availability for chambers and the way the calendar was falling, the initial suggestion is to have just the one meeting in April, which would be the adoption of the budget, and then hopefully take a nice celebratory break until we reconvened in May. And then again in May, with the earlier start, that is typical with our practice for the Teacher of the Year reception, and then following that, moving right into our meeting.
Thank you. Any questions or comments regarding the proposed calendar? All right, with the motion on the floor, all of those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. And moving right along to our staff communications and reports, where we now will receive our superintendent's report. So Mr. Paul Vicinas, to you, please.
Thank you very much. And as mentioned, it has been a while since we last met, so there are a number of shares and celebrations that I just want to highlight, not only for you as our board, but for our listening public. A lot of student accomplishments to be extremely proud of. The kind of trying to go in chronological order. The first was King Philip 8th grader Ethan Zimmer took away honors this year at the district spelling bee champion. School winners, this is a competition for all of our middle schools. School winners for Bristow and Sedgwick were 8th grader Eliza McClure and 6th grader Evelyn Grunwalt, respectively. All three will have the opportunity to advance to state level competition, which will be upcoming on March 3rd. On Monday, January the 15th, members of the Hall Jazz Combo and Conrad's Voices of the World performed at our town's annual MLK celebration, which was just amazing, as has been always the case. Conard sophomore Juliana Farquharson, maybe you've heard of her, Hall junior Amani Snellings, both provided absolutely stirring, compassionate, motivating comments with their reflections as our student speakers, and their names are now to be installed on the plaque that is downstairs in this building. On Wednesday, January 17th, we were honored by a visit from Governor Lamont, who visited Charter Oak International Academy to announce his Baby Bonds program. Principal Gina Rivera was invited to give comments regarding the importance of the program and its positive benefit, not only on our West Hartford community, but parents across the state. It was a great announcement. You already heard, I won't repeat, Senator Blumenthal, who came to Conard. We were very proud of that, and Chris did an amazing job while there, as did the other Conard students in attendance. Closing out the month of January, on January 31st, Roxy Gagnon, Adelaide Wren, Anna Pax Small, and Madeleine Wickersham, all from Sedgwick Middle School, made a very impressive win to advance to international level competition in the kids literature competition. More amazing, West Hartford had 2 teams in the top 3 of nationals. They had 6 teams of 8 in nationals overall. It was King Philip taking 3rd place, and then students from Cooper Middle School out of Virginia taking 2nd. But it will be our Sedgwick team that will have the opportunity to compete in Australia this summer. So very excited. As I believe was mentioned by one of our student presenters, February 1st, this past Thursday, we kicked off our celebration of Black History Month. The 2024 theme for Black History Month is African Americans and the Arts, spanning the many positive impacts that Black Americans have had on visual arts, on music, on cultural movements, and much more. Of note this year and related to that theme, I'm really excited to just reference one thing that's happening. Wolcott Elementary has unveiled its new mural featuring prominent figures in African American history. As is our practice at the elementary school, the students are spent this last week researching individuals depicted in that mural and others. They record short summaries of their findings in that research, and then other schools, and they're actually doing this on a voiceover on a QR code. So other students will come by, listen to what they've learned, and then conduct research of their own on different individuals and post that. And over the course of the month, students cycle through what is a dedicated learning space in each of our elementaries. And there's a very similar practice across all of our 11 elementaries, but the mural is unique to Wolcott and quite a sight. I included a picture I emailed to all of you this evening. 3 Conard seniors very recently, Rachel Himes, Shreya Pant, and Tai Nguyen were all recognized as Artists of Promise at the Connecticut Regional Scholastic Arts Award. They were offered a $92,000 scholarship payable over 4 years to attend the University of Hartford's Hartford Art School. And finally, to close out this theme of arts that we're on right now, save the date, March 6th from 4:30 to 6:30. Our own Fine and Performing Arts Department is hosting its annual open reception for Art Beat. That exhibit is at the Salt Box and Clubhouse Galleries on Buena Vista Road, and information is posted on our website. Apologize, I'm going to be a little long tonight because it's been a little while. Some important updates to share about. Dedication of facilities. As you may know, we've had several unprecedented requests for dedication of facilities, naming of fields and things of that nature. We have we're in some of the later stages of research on this. This is unprecedented. We don't have any form of policy. We've done a lot of negotiation with the town that has said the schools, despite the fact that they own these, we can take on naming them. So we are convening a committee of teachers, students, and families to review these requests from the public for dedication of facilities. There'll be an ad hoc committee that meets to review each individual request against a set of criteria. This criteria was developed in accordance and in alignment to similar other kind of Hall of Fame things that in sports, education, and the military. And I will provide the boards the specifics on those recommendations that come forward from that ad hoc committee as they progress. Another state mandate, but something well aligned to our district vision, is the requirement to submit an increasing educator diversity plan. So in accordance with legislation from this past legislative session, and as I said, in alignment to our district plan and vision, we're preparing to file a district action plan to increase educator diversity. That filing will go to the Connecticut State Department of Education. The plan is still in draft, and it will be presented in front of the Board of Education for your approval. It focuses on current and proposed retention strategies, highlights and also highlights our participation in programs such as the Teacher in Residence program, Future Educators of Diversity, and other efforts that are undertaken. So please expect to see that by early March. I feel it important to follow up on kindergarten start date. As you know, that's a significant change for operation of our schools, and we had an excellent presentation last time we met. Since that public announcement, we've received a total of 64 requests for age waivers. We will be acknowledging receipt of all of those requests, and individuals are scheduled for a kindergarten readiness assessment, which began today and are ongoing through February 21st. We did land with a nationally normed assessment known as the DIAL. It is a kindergarten readiness type assessment that assesses motor skills, language skills, and concepts. And in addition, we're using local tools to assess social and behavioral skills, typically as we have done to make individualized readiness assessments for children and provide that feedback to families on an individual basis. Everything should be communicated by the end of February, and we'll schedule follow-up meetings with any families as necessary. Excited to announce a bus pilot program called the First View, which is a GPS school bus tracking system. That program's currently under pilot at Morley and Whiting Lane Elementaries. It's an app that's freely available for parents that they would opt into if they choose, that basically allows the user real-time information as to the location of the bus. So you can see if it's running a little ahead of schedule, running behind, et cetera, et cetera. It was mentioned briefly in the report. The Duffy HVAC project, or the Duffy Fresh Air project, is essentially underway. We anticipate that its construction will begin this spring. I wanted to let you know and the public know that this will require the installation of portables, as there'll be a need as they do that project to potentially be relocating pods of classrooms and kind of cycling that through as they work on different parts of the building. More information on this project will follow as the work itself gets underway. Let me know if you have any immediate questions, and I'll certainly be able to get answers. Public service announcement, just for your visibility, Conard Principal Jamal Hines did send an announcement home in late January to extend his leave through the early spring. So very, very happy to report that Conard remains in good hands with Ms. Jocelyn Tamarone Noble as the interim principal, providing outstanding leadership in his absence. And a note to the Conard community of the extension of that leave did go out. We're welcoming back Shelley Solomon to step in the second semester as interim assistant principal to help out with needs in those buildings. Other good news at Conard, the NEASC. NEASC is an acronym short for New England Association of Schools and Colleges. Their accreditation team came to visit Conard in the winter, and they've recently provided us with their accreditation report, which was replete with many commendations as to the great things that are going on. Also gave us some great inputs for areas for our continuous improvement plan, and that really forms the basis of the school development plan as we move forward. Myself and Ann McKernan, we were excited to sit in on what's called the 250 Task Force. So we were representatives from the school district to attend the first of a series of planning meetings that are being hosted by the town of West Hartford in preparation for celebrations and educational events commemorating the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States in July of 2026. Town leadership, together with school and community partners, are developing this task force to plan and implement programming, and that programming is intended to host events throughout this year, next year, and leading up to the July event. I wanted to let you know that under agri-science, we are exploring additional partnerships in response to some community interest for a broader range of agricultural science programming. The curriculum office is working with some other programs to explore the potential to add a full-day program in addition to maintaining our relationship with the Harris Center in Bloomfield, which offers a half-day experience. We're very content with our current partners, but there seems to be some genuine public interest in a full-day program, so that is something that we are exploring. Under budget, I will just hit the summer enrichment grant. We've applied for a summer enrichment grant that could potentially provide additional learning opportunities for our middle school students. It's middle school specific, and it would be an enrichment program similar to what we offered under ESSER, with the exception that it would be a full-day program, whereas typically our summer programs have been half-day. It's a contingency of the grant that we offer a full day, and so we're very excited and interested to apply for that grant, and should we receive the positive news that it's accepted and funded, we'll certainly be providing additional information. So those are highlights from my report. I apologize it's long-winded, but I'll be happy to entertain any questions.
First off, please do not apologize. Wonderful news to hear, and thank you for keeping us abreast. Any questions for what's been shared? Claire.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to the Kids Lit Quiz winners. I started in the program at Duffy years and years ago, and some kids came to Sedgwick, found a leader, and Sedgwick has been knocking it out of the ballpark. So they went to England to represent West Hartford, and now it's amazing. They're going again.
Yeah, I was talking with Shannon McNeese. She had shared that they had had quite a run for several years getting to that world level competition. So very exciting.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you so very much. And before we move on to hearing our additional wonderful staff reports and board discussions, would like to make a motion for a 5-minute recess, please. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you so much. We'll recess just for 5 minutes, please. Thank you. that, we now will have the special education of West Hartford Public Schools. And we thank you so much, Ms. Melissa Caballera, for joining us here, as well as Ms. Christina. Christina's not here, all right. And Ms. Marie Davis will report. Thank you so very much.
Good evening and Happy New Year. I know it's February, but it's our first time meeting, and we are honored to be able to provide this report on my favorite topic with my favorite department, the topic of special education, and discussing our West Hartford Public Schools Pupil Services Department, which is responsible for servicing students who have disabilities and are eligible for special education. In tonight's presentation, I'm going to give you a high-level overview of our policies and procedures and laws that govern our work. Something that's important for you to know is that everything you hear tonight is governed by law, both at the federal and state level. It drives our work and our mandates related to special education. And I'm fortunate to have my colleague, Dr. Marie Davis, here with me, who has been a leader in our district for a number of years and specializes in working with our out-of-district students and programs, and will be able to share some of the amazing work she's doing, both to support students while they're out of district and also to support our initiative of bringing students back to district. So I'm happy to have her with me to share our report and provide you some information. And anytime I start talking about special education, I always like to start with just talking about when these laws came into being, because it wasn't that long ago that these provisions were put in place for our students with disabilities. It was actually in 1975 that our first law, Public Law 92-142, which was originally called the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, went into place, which is now known as IDEA. But it's just important to note that that was a recent time when those provisions were put in place for students with disabilities to have access to education. And I always like to have that at the forefront, because sometimes we take for granted the opportunities that are provided to our students and our within our community for individuals with disabilities. But these are newer laws that continue to be revised and monitored as we go on. But we're fortunate to have them in place at this time. And while we internally have our own monitoring and supervisory practices, it's also important to note, because all of our processes are under law and we're complying with law, and we're going to give you a high-level overview of some components, we are actually monitored additionally by the Connecticut State Department of Education. And there is an annual report, performance report, that comes out with key indicators, providing us feedback on whether we've met criteria in some really important areas, such as time students spend with non-disabled peers, early childhood outcomes, disproportionality, which is over-identification by race, and transition planning, as well as compliance with federal and state IDEA timelines. And so I'm proud to share with you that last week our report for the 2023 school year was released, and we met at the highest criteria marking, which was meets requirements in all areas. And so we were very proud to have that report released to be able to reflect on our practices and compliance with our federal and state laws. And so I will start with that good news, and with that, I'll dive right into the presentation. So as I shared, all of the work we do is governed by laws. Our main law that we are following is the Individuals with Disability Act, and you often hear these three terms, most of them in acronym form. So I do want to just give a little context to these components of IDEA that really drive our work. Child Find is the predominant one, which really talks about our ability to locate and identify students who might have disabilities and then determine whether or not they meet special education criteria to make sure we're providing them with the services and specialized instruction that they might require. Free and appropriate education is the law that supports students having full access as their non-disabled peers. And least restrictive environment refers to us continuously reviewing a student's opportunities to have their education met in that least restrictive environment with time with non-disabled peers. As I said, we review our laws all the time. Most recently, in our summer legislative session, we had some laws that changed that you heard about in the beginning of the year because it immediately impacted our staffing in our post-secondary program. We're always responding to our state and federal legislature. And so in that legislature this summer, you might remember that they changed the year of a majority for students who are in our post-secondary program. So that was just changed this summer. We had students exiting as they turned 22. The law then changed to say the students are eligible through the full year that they are 22. So that was immediately put in place in response to that legislature. Similarly, we just received guidance. Another piece of legal guidance that came out of that session this summer was statements around mediation. So that statement was provided by the Department of Education just last week, I believe. And so now those rules about reading mediation statements at PPTs will go into place for us. So we're always reviewing and monitoring any guidance that's coming both at the federal and state level to make sure that we're communicating with our team members and abiding by the laws that govern our practice. So this is, again, is a broad overview of how our referral practice works. When we receive a referral, whether it's from a parent or from a school team, that referral initiates our planning and placement team process, whereby which we convene a multidisciplinary team which includes the parents, a special education teacher, a general education teacher, and related service providers, as well as an administrator, to understand the concerns that the parent or school team might have regarding a child's ability to find success in the school environment. And the team then considers whether or not a comprehensive evaluation would be necessary in order to be able to learn more about how that child thinks and learns. If the PBT determines that an evaluation is necessary, we would conduct those evaluations and come back together to determine eligibility. And on the screen, you see our eligibility categories, some of which have very clear checklists and guidelines from the federal level, others that have checklists and guidelines from the state level. And while we can't go more loose than the federal government, the states have autonomy to make further guidance for teams at the state level. So some things that are different about the state of Connecticut that I'd like to point out is under specific learning disability, something that's unique to the state of Connecticut is we have SLD dyslexia. So other states in the United States do not recognize SLD dyslexia as one of the IDEA categories for a disability. And so that's one unique area. Another unique area is developmental delay. States across the United States identify developmental delay in different ways. So we in the state of Connecticut identify developmental delays between the age of 3 and 5. But in other states, some states might say you can have a developmental delay until you're age 7. So when the state of Connecticut, if a child is eligible under a developmental delay and they are about to turn 5, we would reconvene and conduct comprehensive evaluations to better determine what eligibility category, if any, they continue to be eligible for if that developmental delay was going to be an age out. But just like to point out that there's some variance in both federal and state guidance, and that states can certainly provide further guidance that might be more restrictive than federal law.
Okay. Individual education plans, or IEPs, are at the heart of everything that we do in special education. Input is gathered from all team members using data in its development. And these documents outline what the student's working on, where they're working on it, how they're working on it. And they're updated on a yearly basis and sometimes more frequently than that, and as needed.
So we told you a little bit about our policies and procedures that guide the work that we do, and now I want to share a little bit about our West Hartford Public Schools teams and how we interpret these laws to provide students the services and supports that they need. So we are honored and privileged to support 1,817 total students with IEPs. As you see, they're not all in our public school settings. We have 1,558 students with IEPs that are within our in-district schools. We have another 50 students who are West Hartford residents that choose to attend magnet and charter schools that have individualized education plans. We do, our West Hartford public school teams supervise and manage the implementation and services provided at the magnet and charter schools. We're ultimately still responsible for the creation and monitoring of services of those IEPs. We also have 130 students who are out of district placed at special education placements. And we have 79 students who are not necessarily West Hartford residents, but attend a private or parochial school within the physical town of West Hartford who are eligible for special education services. And so we monitor their provisions on a private school service plan, which is a little bit different than an individualized education plan, but it really is the notation that these children continue to be eligible for special education, and were they to go back to their home district or re-enroll in a public school, that private school service plan would be converted back to their individualized education plan. We currently have 125 students that are in the referral process that are actively being evaluated in this present moment. And we service students grades pre-kindergarten through post-secondary or age 3 through the end of a child's 22nd year. All of this work is led by 6 full-time special education department supervisors, 2 of which are part-time who support our smaller programs. They actually continue to stick with us in retirement, so we're very fortunate to have them. Mr. Ed Diadio oversees our Section 504 plans, which lives a little bit separate and different from our department, kind of lives underneath both curriculum and I, and also Carrie Anderson, who supports our nursing department. Our nursing department does fall under pupil services, and so our nursing department supervisor oversees all of the nurses, of which we have at least one in every building.
Okay, so here you'll see a list of the varied licensed professionals who may work with a student per their IEP, providing academic support services and/or clinical support. All work collaboratively with our classroom teams to support fidelity of services. Additionally, they can provide parent trainings on an individual basis to support continuity across settings. Some highlights on this list include the fact that we have 2 transition coordinators who evaluate students and provide instruction within the school and in community settings. Our assistive technologist provides consultative services and training for staff, students, and families, and also works with some of my out-of-district students. And we also have a nurse department supervisor who oversees the entire nursing department. All right. Adult support staffing. Our adult support staff assists with academic and behavioral support, which includes implementing and collecting data in regards to individualized behavior intervention plans. Registered behavior technicians work under the direct supervision of our BCBAs and provide specialized support in behavioral modification and management. All of the above work closely with the student's grader team to guarantee fidelity of services. Sign language facilitators include provision of sign support for students, but also include support with academics and activities of daily living.
So all of these providers provide services in our public schools and beyond on a continuum of services, which means that they range from least restrictive to more restrictive to allow for settings that are needed for our students. And so at all of our schools, we have resource models, which might include a push-in or pull-out services to provide academic support or clinical speech and language, co-taught and consultative models as well. Our more specialized programs include our Early Learning Center, which is a NIAC-approved preschool program that supports students as they exit the Birth to 3 program, ages 3 through next year 5, and provides students support with pre-instructional skills, social skill development, and engaging with peers. We also have an intensive academic program which supports students who have highly specialized learning needs, and the staff selected to work in those programs have specialized training and skills around the area of behavior modification and discrete skill instruction. And we work on life skills, functional skills, and academic skills in those programs.
And continuing on the continuum, these programs are designated to assist students with behavioral concerns, teaching students skills and strategies in order to promote more positive behavior and thus more success in the academic setting. The ultimate goal is to return students to the general education classroom and to their home school. These programs also include board-certified behavior analysts, and registered behavior technicians as support staff. The post-secondary program helps students gain skills specific to their life goals. They work on authentic vocational, life skills, personal hygiene, and community access skills. They may attend full-time or attend around designated employment or training outside of the program. Student and family participates in developing the student goals. The school engagement program at Hall and Conard supports students who struggle with school disengagement and anxiety around the larger school setting. The team provides clinical and academic support, and the goal again is to return the students to the general education setting, hopefully. Out of district placements. We currently have 130 students placed by the PPT in out of district schools. As the department supervisor, my responsibility is to provide case management and supervision of the process and support students and their families. This is a very collaborative position, requiring me to work closely with over 42 different out-of-district school teams across the region. This work includes IEP development and continual monitoring of academic and behavioral data. A highlight is that through this work, I've been able to return 32 of our West Hartford students back into in-district programs by working with the out-of-district and in-district teams. Prior to COVID, I would go to each of the schools for every PPT meeting, but now with our new reality with virtual meetings, we conduct site visits each month to check on student progress and to better understand both the scope of services provided and the physical environment.
And while they're not part of our hired team, the most important team members that we have in our pupil service department are our families. And I think it's really important to make sure I include them in this work because from the onset, they're our most valued partners in both the referral process, the development of evaluations, understanding their child, and being able to be responsive to their needs. We continue to find ways to connect with our families. We're very fortunate to have a highly collaborative special education parent-teacher organization. We actually have an event, a joint event that's coming up next week that we have annually, which is our transition night, which supports any students transitioning between levels. So while we have transition activities for all of our incoming kindergarten students, our upcoming 6th grade students, and our incoming high school students, this is a night specifically for our parents of students who have individualized education plans to have a private night, to have an opportunity to connect with other parents in our special education PTO and our administrators and school team members. We discuss those more individualized transition activities that are available to our students and our families and the work that starts going into those transitions. Actually now, present moment, we're already talking about and planning for next year. So we work very closely with SEPTO to align our parent offerings and workshops across the year. A quarterly parent newsletter comes out from our office to ensure parents are up to date on some of the legal components that I've shared with you, any news from the department, and any upcoming events. And we work really closely with other community towns. So if there's something else happening in Avon, for example, if they have a parent night that's open to the public, that we're always sharing those different opportunities for parents to engage in the world of special education, whether it's a parent workshop, a social opportunity, just making sure that they're knowledgeable about different opportunities that are available to them. And I host every 6 weeks a coffee with the director. I have a rotating schedule, both in the mornings and then in the evenings, to try to catch as many families as possible with special guests and key topics. It's really an opportunity to talk about broad special education topics, and it's been a very engaging way to be able to connect with parents and hear more about their experience going through the special education processes and understanding how we could be a better support to them in explaining the processes and helping their children find success in our public schools. So with that, I thank you. As our motto says, we're committed to preparing and inspiring all of our students. And I feel very fortunate to be here in West Hartford Public Schools, which has always supported our special education initiatives and our students really to achieve their goals and outcomes. And it's really amazing what our teams are able to accomplish with our students and the opportunities that are available to them in our schools and the activities within our community. So with that, Dr. Marie Davis and I are available for any questions you might have. But thank you for listening to our presentation this evening.
Thank you for sharing the wonderful presentation. Teammates, questions, comments with what has been received? Gayle.
Thanks for the presentation. So, we've talked a lot before about how some of this is driving the budget in a big way. So I was curious, I think you said you had 132 kids that are placed out of the district, correct?
We have 130 currently out of district.
130.
Yes, yep.
And can you tell us, I don't know if you do know how many we had last year?
I don't have the numbers last year, but I do know our number is climbing. In quite frankness, with the 32 coming back, that's a really unprecedented number. I wish I could be able to say we've realized some cost savings here, which would be significant. And as you might know, we've talked about our unfunded mandate of excess costs, which really impacts our district. It's something we're having conversations, with our area district directors such as myself. I know the superintendents are having those conversations. It's a concern we have, that it's an unfunded mandate, and we're always looking at our out-of-district students, what their needs are, and how we can appropriately support them to come back to district.
So what is the unfunded mandate?
It's the excess cost grant, which stipulates that 4.5 times our per pupil expenditure, we would be getting that money back. So it would offset some of the costs that's, with raised tuition rates at some of these out-of-district programs. Last year, I think it was funded at about 74%. We anticipated 80%. This year, we anticipate it to be funded at 68%.
I thought that we have to pay the first 4.5 times what the normal tuition is for a regular student, and then the state kicks in.
Correct. Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Okay. So when you say unfunded mandate, you mean the rest of it on top of that?
Yes. So once we hit that threshold, we anticipate that the way the grant is written, that all of it would be covered once you've hit that threshold, but we've never realized that full grant.
And then when you say that you brought back 32 students, that's over 1 year or that's over multiple years?
Since 2021.
Okay, and even though we've brought back 32 students, our numbers still have climbed?
Correct. Yep, that's correct. And we did have, like if I were to really analyze, and please jump in, Marie, because you know these numbers better than I, but we've had a number of students move in that were already out of district placed. Mm-hmm. And so, in those instances, whether, their sending district, had a program, didn't have a program, had a PPT, had at some point determined that they required an out-of-district placement. And so when we receive those students, we're, continuing their placements as appropriate through their PPT placement. But we are trying to get to know those students, which is why we do physical on-site visits. We were just at a site today. We were at several sites last week. It's really important to our work for us to be able to understand our students if we don't know them. The students that we place along the continuum, we know very well. But students who move into district that are already out of district placed, we're trying to get to know them, understand their programming needs, and whether or not, given our own continuum of services, if there's an opportunity for us to provide them their education in a least restrictive environment.
So I just follow up one thing you said, though. Somebody moves in here and they're already placed outside the district. Do we evaluate them, or do we automatically keep them placed outside the district?
So we must follow their IEP. So if their IEP has already placed them somewhere, we must allow that placement to continue. If we have questions about whether or not it's appropriate placement, or if we think that we can program differently, then we would conduct an evaluation to better understand their needs.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Claire.
So in the referral and eligibility, the RTI program, the tiered approach, is that supervised through your department, or is that more the curriculum department, so that kids might get their needs met in a tier 2 or tier 3 approach and not have to go to special education?
Sure, really great question. So the response to intervention process is a joint partnership with ourselves and the curriculum office. And it is an outcome of several laws, but one of them is actually IDEA because under specific learning disability, if that's a question, one of the ways that we identify whether a child has a specific learning disability is by the engagement in the response to intervention process, which really was a big change from a number of years ago when we used to use the discrepancy model to identify if a child had a learning disability. And it really was a wait to fail model. And so I was really happy when that legislation changed. And so West Hartford Public Schools uses a lot of screening tools for early intervention. It has a very robust SRBI response to intervention model that really is designed to help capture a student's needs very early on to thereby provide services. And so they do use that process and work in conjunction with any special education teachers to review data, understand how a child's progressing, and determine when and if a referral to special education is necessary.
So the least restrictive environment and the environment that you give a lot of the special ed kids with their mainstream peers is critical, and it gives them the ability to then function out in the world when they graduate. In the post-secondary, is there any opportunities, and I don't know if the STRIVE program is an appropriate population, but are there opportunities in post-secondary other than the workforce for the students to mingle and interact with mainstream peers?
Yes, actually, we are constantly trying to find different ways for our post-secondary students to be interacting with non-disabled individuals because that's what workforce they'll be joining in the world, and we want to make sure that they're comfortable and they're able to acclimate. So that happens at some of our school sites, which also happen to be vocational sites, and also through the STRIVE program, which is housed on the same campus, and through the culinary program, as well as opportunities for students to come here to Town Hall and engage with adults and other young adolescents.
Other questions? All right. Well, thank you so very much for this information. I do actually have a question. With the information you shared, and thank you so much, would you say, and it may be a rhetorical question, how much of the increase, or just how much of what you're seeing, do you think may be a direct manifest or influenced by directly from the pandemic and all that we experienced, or what may have already been underlying and just became exacerbated because of what we experienced with COVID?
Yeah, sure. That's hard to determine. You know, you really don't know. There's no absolute answer to that. But we do see some students that when they're younger, they haven't had exposure to a pre-K setting. They haven't been out of the home very much the last few years. So that has impacted, I think, the younger population, certainly. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you very much for recognizing the value of family input and uplifting the parent voice, family voice. So thank you so much. All right. Thank you again. And with that, we now will move on to routine matters.
there are students who come to us, and we are getting a trend of more complex needs of students who do access our pupil services. And those complex needs are based on the fact that we do a good job for every child every day. And but we need the partnership with the state of Connecticut in order to be able to provide for that. So I'll step off my soapbox. I just had to say that. I know I'm preaching to a choir.
But the preaching must take place. Yes, my oh my. Thank you, thank you. Yes, Claire.
So, and this is kind of, it's Melissa and you, but for the students that are outplaced, is there usual an agreement that this is the best for the student, or is it sometimes a legal issue and, that advocates or attorneys and the parents just want that, but yet you feel you can meet the needs?
Well, I would certainly say it's always a legal issue, and I don't know if issues, there's always a legal aspect to it because the outcomes of a planning and placement team as it forms these recommendations for an individualized educational plan, it becomes a legal document, becomes a responsibility, and certainly parents are always advocating, and there are educational advocates to try to get the best for their child, but we act very much in partnership, but hopefully also very responsibly in terms of what is the best for each child. And there are definitely times when it is our opinion that we feel that we can provide for the child internally, and there are definitely times when we look at a situation and say, this child needs something beyond what we can provide, and we do have a recommendation for a specific setting that might be most appropriate. It really reflects the work of Dr. Marie Davis in terms of her work with the outplacements and the continual contact and monitoring of students, so that number one, if they are in an outplacement, that placement is enabling them to progress with their IEP goals, and at what points that progression might enable them to be able to come back into the district. So that number 32, that's a big number of students to return, and it's also a point of pride in terms of the idea that we do have the ability to provide for those students internally. So it's as much a reflection of the quality of our programming as it is sort of the monitoring of the appropriateness of a placement. But at the end of the day, we will always be bound by what's best for the child, whether that's internally or externally. Finances are a very real part of it, but our obligation trumps that, and there are many laws and protections to ensure that we follow kind of that right kind of decision making.
But I'm assuming this is a nationwide issue, and that not only is Connecticut kind of known for special ed support, but West Hartford has that reputation too. So people are drawn to a state or even a town with those needs, and I'm assuming that a lot of the private special ed schools and population there is growing nationwide, because there is, for some reason, a lot more special ed needs every single year across the United States.
No, absolutely. I think you're 100% right. I think Connecticut is well known for the quality of its educational programming, to include very much special education programming, and I think West Hartford as well. I think in that regard, families do, seek us out based on our reputation, and that's definitely a feather in our cap and a positive. But it speaks to the importance of some of the state laws in order for us to be able to kind of deliver on our promises. We look at promises made in the legislature as to how things should be funded, so that we're not really trying to cry poverty. We're trying to be able to provide for the very real needs of students that we have an obligation to.
Yes, Gayle.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to say this, but when Melissa was sitting up there, but I want to keep talking. But since you brought it up, one thing I actually had talked to Melissa a little bit about maybe about a year ago is why we can't, with that number of 130 so students who are being outplaced, obviously, large amounts of money, why there's never a thought of potentially trying to become a center where we bring some of those students back, as well as potentially bringing students from other towns that would need services, which would seem to me, one, we would keep our students in district, two, we would potentially change the flow of money from going out to potentially coming in. And I know that's not a discussion for right now, but it's just something that I think with a district, of our size and our capabilities, why we never look, I'm not saying we never, but why it hasn't been looked at to try to reverse it so that we become the place where everybody else is sending their kids.
Certainly. No, I think I think that thought is something that we do consider and where we're able to achieve that. So for instance, our school engagement program is an example of that. We typically used to hire out for those services if we go back several years, and we said, hey, we can do better. We can design a system internally to be able to support that. I think some of our post-secondary types of services model that. But when you get into the world of outplacement, the complexity of it, you could be talking about residential programming, you could be talking about medically fragile children that require hospitalization services. So, and it's extremely varied. So, to every extent possible, where there is something that we feel we can deliver and replicate, that is something that we're either A, already doing, or B, we're looking at and considering, is this something that we might want to do. We have had I think a small number of students who have come to take advantage of some of our programming. I don't know if our Strive program was one place that we had.
Our Strive was, but it's been more post-secondary program with students who are to be educated through their 22nd birthday. We've had students from other districts come and pay tuition and participate in our program.
And even that, I made the mention of the unfunded mandate through the 22nd birthday. We have students that are in outplacement. Typically, if you have some, very significant needs, to where you are outplaced, you may qualify for services through the full school year of the year in which you turn age 22. And so those costs, that's a component of of that change in legislation that did not accompany. I'm not trying to fault the intent of the legislation is honorable, but not supporting school districts with the funding for that is a significant miss. So, but I think I'm just kind of beating that to death. I think your larger point is definitely well taken, and something to the extent that's practical that we are very interested to continue to pursue.
I don't pretend at all to be an expert at this, but it would seem to me that, I understand medical fragility and some kids obviously not going to happen. But when you have a number like 132, it seems to me that maybe some of those kids, if we were able to set up programs, would be able to come back to our own district and maybe bring in others as well. But that's just...
Sure, no, I'm happy. I'll work with Melissa and get... I can't pretend to be as expert as she and her team, but talk to you about maybe a little bit more in my budget presentation about what that looks like and what we would expect would be what would could be feasible, could be something we think about longer term, and what, the things that we just kind of maybe a broad kind of picture of the things that we really just honestly can't replicate, so that you can have an understanding of what goes. I definitely want to make sure that everyone has an understanding of what are the types of services behind that 132.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Shannon.
Just, I'm curious, when we look at things like interest on investments, I have no idea, honestly, on like what the parameters are, restrictions on how you can make those investment decisions. Are you able to be pretty nimble there, or?
No, not at
Okay,
all. There
okay.
are very strict state regulations as to what we're able to invest in.
Okay.
It's primarily money market type accounts, as well as the state short-term investment fund. And so we have been fortunate in that interest rates have been favorable last year and continue to be favorable this year. But really, what the state is concerned about and what we're concerned about is the preservation of capital. And so we really don't take risks with the cash that we have on hand. So very restrictive investments.
Pardon me, other questions or comments? All right. Well, robust discussion here, and it all is quite related, all certainly related, and certainly giving us a nice introduction of what is to come with respect to our budget discussion. So thank you so very much, Liz. Thank you, Claire, for the update. And with that, we will move right on along to approval of the minutes. Seeking a motion that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the regular Board of Education meeting of December the 19th, 2023. Is there a motion?
I make motion.
Thank you, Claire. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. Discussion? All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? The aye.
Abstain.
Aye. Thank you so much. Yes, one abstention. Thank you. And the ayes have it. Moving on to information and reports. Board members, do we have any communication and reports from other boards or organizations? Seeing none. Any other information or discussions? Seeing none. Future business. Announcement of future meeting dates. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, February the 21st. Once again, that is Wednesday, February the 21st, 2024, where we'll have our regular Board of Education meeting at 7 o'clock here at the Town Hall, followed by Tuesday, March the 5th, 2024, regular Board of Education meeting, where we will have presentation of the superintendent's budget. Then, Wednesday, March the 13th, budget workshop number 1. Here at 7 o'clock at the Town Hall. Then on Tuesday, March the 19th, 2024, regular Board of Education meeting, 7 o'clock here at the Town Hall. Then on Wednesday, March the 27th, 2024, we will start with our Board of Education public hearing at 7 o'clock, followed by budget workshop number 2, here again at the Town Hall. Do we have a request for any future agenda items?
It's more information, and I'm not sure if it's an agenda. Is it possible to ask the town finance office if there's insurance? Because on this AP thing, it keeps coming back up. And I would think there's got to be, to me, there should be insurance that's available. Could we at least ask the question?
We can ask the question, but it's larger than the AP thing. If you open that door, it's APs, it's sports, it's drama club, it's
understand,
everything.
But if we could just maybe work out with the family, it's worth asking the question. I just feel, if you don't want to do it, I get it, but.
I think it's a board conversation.
What I may, if we could reserve that, just because, again, we don't want to respond to public comments.
No, I got
so
it.
good question, but we will reserve that offline if possible.
If we can discuss it offline.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Not discuss offline, but ask the question that could be answered offline. Yes, thank you. Any other requests for future agenda items? Seeing none. Do we have any visitors that would like to make a comment? Seeing none, we do not have an executive session. With that, seeking a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Ethan. Thank you for seconding, Shannon. Meeting adjourned at 9:30, I believe.